The forest felt endless that evening, stretches of pine trees breathing quietly under a fading sky. The air smelled of damp soil and wood smoke, a combination that always calmed me, though lately, calm was rare. I pitched my tent near the lake's edge, the surface rippling faintly in the wind, and for the first time in months, I felt the weight of silence settle in. It wasn't peace exactly. It was something heavier, something closer to loneliness. Daniel had told me the trip would be good for me. "Clear your head, Ethan," he'd said, trying to sound supportive but sounding more relieved than anything else. We'd been together 7 years, 7 quiet, steady, beautiful years that had slowly dulled at the edges. Arguments had become routines. Affection felt rehearsed. We hadn't held hands in weeks. I told him I needed space to think. What I didn't say was that I'd already been drifting away long before packing my car for this trip. By sunset, the temperature had dropped. I lit a fire, the flames glow flickering against the canvas of my tent. The light made the shadows dance across the trees. I cooked something simple, beans, bread, and a tin mug of black coffee, but my mind wasn't on the food. It was on Daniel's voice echoing through my last memory of home. He had smiled when I left, but it was the kind of smile that hides exhaustion. Maybe we both knew something was quietly breaking. The forest deepened into night. Crickets sang. The occasional owl cut through the stillness. I stretched out by the fire, holding my cup between my palms, watching the stars prick through the sky one by one. For a brief moment, I felt the ache of solitude ease. Then, a sound interrupted it, a soft crunch of footsteps against the leaves. My heartbeat quickened. The sound came closer. I froze, trying to listen, but the wind played tricks on direction. Then I saw it, the faint movement of a shadow, slow and deliberate, just beyond the reach of the firelight. Before I could react, the zipper of my tent stirred. It moved, inch by inch, until a hand appeared, steady but hesitant. "Hey, who's there?" My voice cracked, half whisper, half defense. A man's face appeared through the small gap. His voice was low and apologetic. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I thought this was my tent." He stepped into the light then, his features clearer, unshaven jaw, rain-dark hair, tired eyes that looked more embarrassed than threatening. He carried a flashlight dangling uselessly from his hand. I exhaled, tension sliding off my shoulders. "You're lost." "Yeah," he said, glancing around. "Campsites all look the same in the dark. I went too far up the trail." He smiled awkwardly. "Name's Lucas." "Ethan," I replied, my tone softening. "You're lucky I wasn't holding something sharper than a mug." He laughed lightly, the sound easy and warm. The kind of laugh that dissolved the last traces of fear in me. I offered him a place by the fire, and he accepted, sitting with a tired sigh. We talked for a while, nothing deep, just small things. Where he'd been traveling from, how the lake looked at dawn, the kind of solitude that both soothes and unsettles. He spoke with calm confidence, his eyes often wandering toward the fire as if it held the answers to questions he hadn't voiced. At some point, I realized how close we were sitting. The firelight brushed his face, casting a gold hue over his skin. There was something quietly magnetic about him, his stillness, his ease, the way he didn't fill silence just to avoid it. When he smiled at me, it felt strangely familiar, like recognizing a voice I'd forgotten. Eventually, Lucas stood. "I should find my campsite before it gets colder," he said. "Thanks for not freaking out." "No problem," I replied. "You found the friendliest armed camper out here." He grinned, tugging at the edge of his hood. "Maybe I'll see you in the morning." "Maybe," I said, though I knew I wanted him to. When his footsteps faded into the forest, the silence returned, only now it felt different. Warmer somehow. I sat for a while longer, watching the fire collapse into embers. My heart was steady again, but my thoughts were not. There was something about that brief encounter that unsettled me more than the loneliness ever had. I crawled into my tent, closing the zipper carefully, the sound echoing in the still air. I lay back, staring at the shadowed ceiling, thinking about Lucas's face in the light, the softness in his voice, the way the night had shifted the moment he appeared, and as I drifted between wakefulness and sleep, one thought lingered, quiet, persistent, and strangely frightening. Maybe what I was really running from wasn't Daniel, or our problems, but the version of myself that could still want someone else. Morning arrived without mercy. The storm had passed, leaving a stillness that pressed against the house like a secret refusing to fade. I woke to sunlight spilling across the room, too bright, too honest. The air carried the faint scent of wine and something heavier, guilt. Maybe. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the half-empty glasses on the table. The events of the night replayed in my mind like a film I didn't remember agreeing to watch. Ryan's words, "You'll understand one day," echoed until they lost their meaning. Down the hall, I heard voices. Laughter. Familiar, casual, easy, as though nothing had happened. I followed the sound to the kitchen, every step slower than the one before. Ryan was frying eggs, humming a tune under his breath. Leo sat at the counter, scrolling through his phone. When he saw me, his expression shifted, first surprise, then something close to shame. "Morning," Ryan said brightly, not looking up. "Coffee's fresh." I stared at him, waiting for the apology that never came. "That's it? After last night?" He turned, spatula in hand, eyebrows raised as if I'd interrupted a normal morning. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth," I said. "Why? Why did you plan it?" Ryan set the pan aside, his smile fading. "You needed to feel something again, Ethan. You've been walking around like a ghost for months. I thought, maybe if you remembered what it was like to be wanted." "Wanted?" I cut in. "That wasn't about wanting. That was manipulation." Leo stood, his voice low. "He's right, Ryan. It wasn't fair." Ryan's jaw tightened. "You're the one who went along with it." Leo flinched, then looked at me. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. At first, I thought it was just a way to cheer you up, but then," he stopped, shaking his head. "I started to care. That wasn't supposed to happen." I wanted to believe him, but every word felt like another thread in the same web. "You both decided what I needed without asking me," I said quietly. "Do you know what that feels like? To have your pain turned into someone else's project?" Ryan leaned against the counter, folding his arms. "You're overreacting. Nothing happened that you didn't allow." The sentence hit like a slap. Consent twisted into justification that I stepped back, heart pounding. "You don't get to decide what I allowed. You made me feel safe, and then used that against me." For the first time, Ryan's confidence cracked. He looked away, muttering something under his breath I couldn't catch. Leo reached for my arm, but I moved before he could touch me. "I'm leaving," I said. "Ethan," Leo started, but I shook my head. "Don't. Whatever you think this was, it wasn't real." I went back to the guest room, packing my things with trembling hands. Every item that went into the bag felt heavier than it should have, as though the air itself resisted letting me leave. When I turned, Leo stood at the doorway, hesitant, guilt written across his face. "I just wanted you to know," he said softly, "last night wasn't all a lie. I did care." I met his eyes, searching for the sincerity I'd missed before. "Maybe it was there, maybe not. You can't build something real on deceit," I said. "Even if your heart means well." He nodded, eyes lowering. "I know." Outside, the sky hung gray and quiet. The driveway was slick from the rain, the scent of wet earth heavy in the air. As I loaded my bag into the car, Ryan appeared on the porch. "You're really leaving?" he called out that I didn't look at him. "You got what you wanted. You made me feel something." He didn't answer. Maybe he couldn't. That I started the car, the engine breaking the silence that had settled over everything. For a moment, I glanced in the rearview mirror, Ryan still standing there, Leo behind him, both of them framed by the doorway like a memory I was trying to escape. As I drove away, the reflection faded, replaced by the open road stretching ahead, the voice in my mind, the one that used to whisper doubt, was quiet now, replaced by something clearer, harder that I had trusted them, and they had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. But maybe, in that betrayal, I'd found something unexpected, a reminder that I could still feel anger, hurt, and the will to move forward. Sometimes, healing doesn't come from kindness. Sometimes, it comes from walking away. That I didn't glance back again, but as the rain began to fall once more, I couldn't help thinking of Ryan's final words. "You'll understand one day." Maybe I would. Just not today. When I woke, the rain had stopped. The world outside the tent was damp and hushed, washed clean by the night. Lucas was already up, crouched near the dying fire, coaxing a faint flame from wet wood. He looked up when I stepped out, his smile small but genuine, like nothing had happened, like the silence between us had simply dissolved into the dawn. "Coffee?" he asked, lifting a tin mug. That I nodded, grateful for the simplicity of the gesture. The aroma of burnt beans and smoke filled the air. We sat side by side again, but this time, there was no easy laughter, no nervous energy. Just a shared quiet, shaped by everything we hadn't said. The lake shimmered under pale morning light. I found myself watching Lucas's reflection in the water more than the horizon itself. He had that same stillness about him, that unguarded ease that drew me in despite myself. But now, it only made the knot in my chest tighter. That he broke the silence first. "You don't have to explain anything," he said softly. "Last night. I get it. I shouldn't have let it get that far," I murmured. "It didn't go anywhere," he said, turning toward me. "Sometimes, stopping means more than following through." His words settled deep. There was no bitterness in them, only understanding. That made it worse somehow, his grace, his calm acceptance. I wanted him to be angry. It would have been easier to leave anger behind than kindness. That we spent the morning in fragments, packing tents, cleaning the site, exchanging light remarks that felt like placeholders for heavier truths. When the sun climbed higher, I knew it was time to leave. My car was parked near the forest trail, the same road that would lead me back to the city, to Daniel, to the life that suddenly felt too small and too complicated all at once. Lucas walked me part of the way. The path was muddy, leaves slick beneath our boots. The air smelled of rain and pine, sharp and alive. Neither of us spoke until the clearing came into view. "This is where we part ways," he said, his tone steady but his eyes uncertain. That I hesitated, my hands gripping the strap of my bag. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," he replied. "Some things don't need words." I wanted to thank him, for the conversation, the silence, the strange kind of honesty we'd shared, but everything I thought to say sounded too small for what I felt. So instead, I just nodded. That he stepped closer, close enough for me to see the faint stubble on his jaw, the tired kindness in his gaze. Then, before I could react, he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't a deep kiss, not desperate or stolen, it was soft, fleeting, full of everything we'd left unsaid. When he pulled back, he smiled faintly. "Take care, Ethan." I watched him walk away down the narrow path until his figure disappeared into the trees. For a long time, I stood there, listening to the quiet pulse of the forest. Then I turned toward my car and drove. The road stretched endlessly, winding between wet fields and low hills. My mind drifted between what had happened and what hadn't. Guilt and longing tangled together until they were indistinguishable. I told myself it was harmless, that I hadn't truly betrayed Daniel, but the truth was heavier than that. I'd crossed a line the moment I wanted something that wasn't mine. When I reached home, Daniel was in the kitchen, stirring sugar into his coffee. He looked up and smiled, that familiar tired smile I'd known for years. "Hey," he said, "how was the trip?" "Peaceful," I answered, though my voice faltered on the word. He hugged me, and I stood there, feeling the warmth of him, the comfort of routine. His arms felt safe, but a part of me stayed somewhere by that lake, caught between guilt and gratitude. Over the next few days, life resumed its rhythm: work, dinner, small talk, silence. Yet something had shifted. I started to notice things I'd stopped seeing, the way Daniel hummed while reading the news, the way he always left the light on for me when I came home late. There was tenderness there, quiet and worn, but still real. One night, I watched him fall asleep beside me, the city lights brushing across his face, and I realized that love wasn't always passion or discovery. Sometimes it was the choice to stay, even when staying was hard. Lucas remained a memory, one that didn't fade, but softened with time. He wasn't a mistake. He was a mirror, showing me the parts of myself I'd forgotten, the hunger I'd tried to bury under years of habit. As I lay awake, I thought of the forest, the rain, the flicker of the firelight on his face. And I whispered, quietly, to no one in particular, sometimes it takes a stranger to remind you what love is, and what it isn't. Weeks passed, yet the forest lingered in me, the scent of wet earth, the echo of rain against canvas, and the quiet weight of Lucas's goodbye. Life had resumed its rhythm, but something inside me had changed shape, like a river that had silently carved a new path beneath the surface. Daniel didn't ask many questions about the trip. He seemed relieved I had returned, calmer, lighter. I played along, smiled more, tried to bridge the distance we'd built between us. We went out to dinner, talked about work, watched old shows we'd forgotten we liked. From the outside, we looked like a couple rediscovering each other. But beneath the small gestures, guilt moved like a quiet current. One evening, while I was washing dishes, Daniel approached from behind, wrapping his arms around me. It was simple, ordinary, but I froze. His touch, once grounding, now felt like a question I didn't know how to answer. "You're quiet lately," he said softly. "Different, but in a good way. Did you find what you were looking for out there?" I dried my hands, staring at the faint reflection of us in the kitchen window, the two of us framed by domestic stillness. "Maybe," I said. "I think I found perspective." He smiled, kissing the back of my neck. "Then it was worth it." I nodded, but inside, the ache deepened. Perspective, yes, but also contradiction. Lucas's words echoed like a whisper that refused to fade. Sometimes comfort feels a lot like suffocation. I wondered if Daniel felt it too, the slow narrowing of space between love and habit. Days turned into weeks. I buried myself in work, convincing myself that what happened at the lake was nothing more than a brief fracture, a momentary drift. But every night when I lay beside Daniel, my mind wandered back, to the quiet honesty of that firelight, to the way Lucas had looked at me without expectation. It wasn't desire that haunted me, it was recognition. Then, one evening, Daniel found the photo. It was printed, tucked inside my journal, a shot of the lake at dawn, taken on my phone by Lucas. The light was golden, soft, almost unreal. Daniel held it up when I entered the room. "Beautiful place," he said evenly. "Who took it?" For a heartbeat, I couldn't speak. "A camper I met there," I said finally. "He was a photographer." Daniel's gaze didn't waver. "You talk about him?" "No," I admitted. "There's nothing to talk about." He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Then he set the photo down and walked away. The conversation ended there, but silence took its place, sharp, heavy, and unrelenting. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Daniel's quiet breathing beside me. The weight of truth pressed down harder than any confession could. I hadn't been unfaithful in body, but I had betrayed something far more fragile, the safety of our unspoken trust. By morning, I knew what I had to do. When Daniel woke, I asked if we could talk. We sat at the edge of the bed, the sunlight spilling through the curtains. I told him everything, not every detail, but enough to make honesty complete. The loneliness, the confusion, the almost of it all. I expected anger, maybe even an ending. Instead, he just looked at me, eyes full of pain, but also a strange relief. "I knew something was missing," he said quietly. "I just didn't know what." "I don't want to lose you," I said. "But I can't keep pretending nothing's broken." He nodded, a tear tracing down his cheek. "Then let's stop pretending." We didn't decide anything that morning. There was no dramatic goodbye, no promise to fix what couldn't be repaired. We simply sat there, side by side, in the stillness of two people realizing that love sometimes changes form, and that maybe that's okay. In the days that followed, we gave each other space. Real space this time. Daniel stayed with a friend, I stayed home, alone. The quiet was heavier than before but somehow cleaner, like the pause after a storm. One evening, I walked through the park near our apartment. The air smelled faintly of rain. The clouds broke just enough for a strip of sunlight to touch the trees, turning everything gold for a heartbeat. It reminded me of the lake, of Lucas, of the moment I'd nearly stepped beyond who I thought I was, and in that moment, I understood something simple but unshakable. Infidelity isn't always measured in actions, it's born in absence, in the spaces where love forgets to reach. I took a slow breath, closed my eyes, and let the light warm my face. Maybe Daniel and I would find our way back. Maybe not. But for the first time, I felt ready to face either outcome, because I finally understood the cost of silence, and the fragile grace of truth.